My time has come, we've had some fun.
It's time for the Ship's Gonna Happen podcast. Here with a load of laughs, info, and fun, it's Tony B, Dave B, and Timmy D.
Before I go alone. Don't ask me this and one more song. It ain't too costly, no, I ain't too cheap, so just relax. I'm on my knees.
Welcome to the Ship's Gonna Happen podcast, episode number 131. My name's Tony B. Alongside me, as usual, and every Saturday morning in the Ship's Gonna Happen studio is David B. Good morning, David B. It is a beautiful Saturday morning. I'm excited about today's guest. We have Cheryl Costa on. Cheryl's written numerous books about the UFO, UAP situation in our country, and we'll talk to her about a book she wrote. Recent book, which is UFOs in Indiana and where to find them, which is astonishing. So we'll get into that with her. First of all, the views of Ship's Gonna Happen are purely news-driven and do not express the views of any transportation provider, that being a UFO or UAP, and does not express any interest or views of a business entity that would use them as well. So, David, we do it because of the transportainment. You can catch us on Google, Rumble, all the search engines. You put our name in there, Ship's Gonna Happen, and you will find us. David B., happy Saturday morning, brother.
Producer Tony, it is Saturday, March the 9th, and your yard looks like it should be Saturday, June the 9th or whatever, because that's a good-looking yard. I don't know what you've done to it yet. There's no yard in this neighborhood, or even driving over here as green as that thing. I think we're on the 19th hole, or at least it looks like we're on the 19th hole of a golf course. That is a beautiful looking yard, my friend. I don't know what you do. I don't know what magic touch you have.
Know.
You need to quit the job that you have and do this for a living. It is, your yard is just looks outstanding. Absolutely outstanding.
Thank you, sir.
So this show, along with our other shows, brought to you by The Great Divide, 743 East New York Street, downtown Indianapolis. Great place to go after a Ship's Gonna Happen week. Great place to go to get a great meal, hear some good music, get a great drink, chat it up with the locals. They're a big sponsor of our show. We greatly appreciate everything that they do for us. And just a reminder, we are going to be broadcasting from there next hour.
Live. Yeah, so I know.
I'm looking forward to
St. Patty's Day.
Yes, that's right.
It's going to be exciting.
Or St. Patty's Day weekend. So yeah, that'll be a good time. So yeah, producer Tony, I'm excited about today's show, and this is going to be a good one.
It's going to be a good one. So Cheryl, welcome to the Ship's Gonna Happen podcast.
Thank you very much, guys.
Good morning, Cheryl. How are you today?
I'm pretty good. Pretty good.
Good.
So we wanted to start, Cheryl, with basically, you've been doing this for a long time, obviously, in the research. You've got a lot of books you've written about this, a lot of study. You do, like you had told us in pre-show here, you do a lot of presentations about this. And so how did you yourself actually begin to get into this?
The short stories. I had my first sighting with my mother and father when I was about 12 years old, back about 1965. And we saw a sphere parked out there in a clear blue sky about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And my mother made a point of saying, well, it might be something NASA's doing. At that time, NASA was a relatively new organization.
Mm-hmm.
And or it might be the Air Force. It might be a weather balloon. And then she looked at me and says, might be people from another world. And that got my attention. And when the thing decided to leave, I didn't see an effect like this again until one of the later Star Trek movies, when the thing just kind of takes off and goes, gone, And I was up in the back window of my father's 65 Impala looking at that thing. Who are you guys? Who are you guys? And it took off like a bat out of hell. And I'm going, oh my God. And a thing like that changes you,
mm-hmm.
Sure.
Now, that means I was relatively well read, but only a few years later, when I got out of high school, I went in service. And I pretty much had to kind of keep that stuff under my, keep that stuff to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because it was kind of frowned upon. Okay.
Right.
And and that was the deal. So I kept, from the point I went into the Air Force through 2 years in the Air Force, combat service in Vietnam, and then a short break for a year or two, and then I went into the Navy and did electronic intelligence work, and I did it for them for almost 10 years, and then I went right into a 32-year career in the aerospace industry. I'm retired from Lockheed Martin.
Wow.
Had nothing to do with Skunk Works. I was
going to ask.
I was no. Lockheed Martin came together from a whole bunch of other defense contractors at the end of the Cold War. And what it amounts to is the company with all the IT resources of all their subcontractors that they kind of sucked up at the end of the Cold War. And, Boeing did the same thing, that type of thing. And basically it amounted to, we had the largest, the IT people will love this term in your audience. We had the largest collection of Class B internet networks in the world. So we actually had more internet service availability within our company. We had more of it than Europe.
Wow.
Okay. So I was early in my career, I was an industrial filmmaker, but eventually people figured out I had skills with computers, and I got sucked into the IT business.
Wow.
And I was there for over half my career. So that's pretty much it. And I pretty much had to keep it all under wraps because I was under the strictures of very high clearance in my work, carry over from the military. Okay. So when they retired me in 2011, I decided to go back to school. And I also went out and started pitching newspapers because I could come out of the closet about UFOs. So I went out and pitched I must have pitched 10 newspapers until somebody took me seriously and didn't throw me out about the idea of writing a weekly UFO column. And the Syracuse New Times picked me up, and it was a little dinky weekly. And I had proposed that the column would be on the online edition because I knew they didn't have the real estate in the printed paper, which is driven completely by advertising, to do. And I was there a month. And the editor told me, "I'll try you out for a month." He had kind of Princess Bride kind of tone. "I'll most likely kill you in 4 weeks" kind of tone, And he called me up 4 weeks later and he said, "Keep doing what you're doing. You get the hottest column in the paper."
Boom.
And a couple of months later, the digital editor, who was my direct interface, I was always a freelance. I was never actually on salary.
Wow.
But they paid me well. I did it for 7 years, 7 years weekly column. Okay. And I could write anything I want. In that time, I only had one column. Nothing was censored, but one column was spiked and never published. Okay. And it happened, this was 3 years in, and I wrote this really snarky article about what I thought disclosure was going to look like when we actually got to the point where the president and the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the heads of the House and the Senate come on national television and say, "Yes, we have had contact with a spacefaring race." What was it going to look like?
Wow.
And I went the snarky route and said, well, okay, suddenly the aliens are going to be our media darlings. They're going to be on Good Morning America with Whitley Strieber and Travis Walton. They're going to be, they're going to be conciliatory type things. They're going to be on everything. They're going to affect our fashions. They're going to affect everything from perfumes to bowling balls, and that's what I wrote. And it's very snarky. And I went to them and said, "You've never censored me before. This is three years into my column." And I said, "Why did you spike that article?" Spiking is a term. The editor just puts the article on a spike and it's not going anywhere. Okay. And I said, "Why did you spike it?" He said, "In 3 years, you have established such gravitas with the flavor of your writing, the stories you tell, the people you interview. We felt that this snarky article was below you."
Do you believe that?
Yeah, it took 7 years of writing the column to convince me of that. Yes.
Okay.
And then it happened also, people ask where the numbers, why did we start doing the numbers? I was writing a weekly column. That is a hard stop, a 800 word to 1,000 word term paper every Thursday. If you think about it, people used to say, it must be fun to write a column, and I'd say, no, it's an 800 to 1,000 word term paper every Thursday.
Wow.
And, so that's what it amounts to. So that got sticky. So I had to have something to write about. So I started adding up the numbers. And of course, New York State was where I lived at the time. And I started adding up the numbers in New York State. And I had access to the National UFO Reporting Center. I also had access to MUFON's data, which I can't get at anymore. But as I started putting all this stuff together, I started noticing certain patterns and things. And so my spouse and I decided to do our first book, which was called UFO Sightings Desk Reference, United States of America, 2001 to 2015. That was our first one. It came out in 2017. Now, here's a goofy piece of history you probably don't know. 2017 was sort of a disclosure year, okay? Most people think of it from the ATIP stuff that came out in the New York Times in December of 2017. Right. Most everybody, that was disclosure, No, actually, it started earlier in the year in February when the Obama administration had the CIA declassify a lot of documents. Now, most of it was announced, there's old Kissinger cables from the Nixon administration, okay? Mm-hmm. But there was a lot of PDFs out there about UFOs. And for years, the CIA said, UFOs? No such thing. We wouldn't research anything like that. That's silliness. And here were all these PDFs, all the stuff they were looking at, including a couple of some of these scientific papers by their OSI division, which is the Office of Scientific Investigation. It's something else now, but at that time, I have one particular one I actually made a copy of it in one of the books we wrote, and I said, here's two OSI scientists arguing about the fact that this stuff seems to peak in the summer months. And the notes scribbled in the margins of this report said, is it summer madness? Is it asteroids? What the heck is causing this peak in summertime?
Wow.
But they only had 130 data points. In 2017, we produced a similar chart with 5,500 data points. And we confirm what that was, and we know why it's like that. Okay. Mm-hmm. A northern state like Indiana, okay, there's a peak between about June, July, and August, and it starts to trail off. Okay, there's a baseline in the state of a certain amount of sightings all year long. Well, we thought it was like that every place. And as we got into our data and started analyzing it and running charts and everything, and people thought, my MUFON friends told me, you're going to do a monthly chart? That's dumb. Why would you do that? Well, what we found out was it's climate driven. A northern state or New England states, Indiana, there's a peak in the June, July, August timeframe. The rest of the year, it's pretty flat. Okay?
Yep.
And basically, it's the weather drives it to some degree. Mm-hmm. Okay? And a lot of people always kicked up and say, it's driven by population. Well, we found out it's driven, yes, by population. It's also driven by weather, by seasonal weather.
That's your principal drivers and secondary drivers, right, that you talk about in your book.
Exactly. I know you saw that in the book, right?
Yep.
And you wouldn't believe how many people push back. They said, no, we see them all the time in daytime. Yeah, but 70% of the sightings happen between 5 o'clock at night and midnight, with the bulk of that happening between 8 and 10 o'clock at night.
Wow.
But this is what the numbers tell. So up until now, all we had was stories. So Ralph Blumenthal saw this in 2017 from the New York Times, and he reached out to us. And he jumped on the train and came up to Syracuse, New York, which is where we lived, and got a hotel room, and he spent 2 days with us.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Two reasons. He wanted to really talk about this stuff in earnest. We sat in the library in my old house and drank tea and ate scones and talked about it. And then we took him to an Irish bar and We all got trashed. You know?
Now you're talking. There we go.
But the thing was, two things. One, he wanted to meet us and see if we were real. Two, he wanted to make sure we weren't living in my mother's cellar.
Right.
Yeah.
Our attic. Okay.
Mhm.
And when he found us, he found two professional people that had decided to dive into this. So let me give you some really high numbers here.
Okay.
This is the United States. Okay. I'm going to give you some really quick high numbers. In 20 years, 2001 to 2020, there were 167,632 reported UFO sightings in the United States. Okay, that's between both databases. An average of about 8,400 per year. Okay, and about 700 per month, about 160 a week, and typically on a day-to-day basis, about 23 per day nationally. Okay. Now, there are some years things like this change, okay? And some of it's driven by the years, some of it's driven by press. The first 6 years of the 20th century, people were still coming online, and access to broadband made a big difference in what people were able to report,
Sure.
okay?
Yep.
The number one, there are 3,535 counties, something like that. It's always changing. Sometimes they merge, sometimes they go out of business and then get absorbed by another county, that type of thing. Okay. There are about 3,500 counties in the country. Only in that 20-year period, only 105 counties in the United States did not report UFOs.
That's amazing.
And they were mostly rural, poor agricultural counties. Okay, we need rural broadband, and we needed it last year.
Right.
Okay, or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, so that gives you a flavor. Now, when you're talking about goofiness, with like, well, let's talk Indiana for a minute. Okay, as you probably noticed in the chart, yearly, it started out in 2001 to about 2007. It's kind of ramping up, and if you just keep going up and don't look at 2008, you'll notice that there was a natural progression. There is this peak over a 20-year period or so that seems to be rather consistent. It goes up and it goes down, goes up and goes down. Okay, and the numbers I'm seeing right now, I'm adding them up or anything, but I've got a couple of models. I can throw in a couple of key numbers from MUFON, not MUFON, but from National UFO Reporting Center, and our data was so accurate I can actually plot where it's going.
Wow.
Okay, I have a mathematical model for that. And this is by the goofy thing. When that white book came out, the one in 2017, I heard from people I hadn't heard from for 40 years from high school and said, Costa, you were flunking math all through high school and you published a book of statistics. You know,
That's great.
The goofy thing about that is it's a thing they taught us in school. Remember, hopefully you remember this from health class. There was a thing called maturation. Everybody matures into something when it's their time and season, so to speak.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I was cracked with mathematics. Barely got out of high school with that stuff. Lower quarter of my class.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now that makes it sound like I was a dullard. Got in the Air Force. They told me I had 140 IQ. Okay.
Yeah.
But I was also dyslexic.
Yeah.
And in the 60s, they didn't test for anything like that.
Nope.
Yep.
Okay. And Air Force put me through some special classes and it changed. So in my mid-20s, one day I was playing with my 4-banger calculator trying to balance my checkbook, and I got a funny pattern. Next thing you know, I'm sitting there in my beanbag chair doing mathematical progressions on my 4-banger for the entire afternoon, because suddenly the numbers were like poetry. They were singing to me.
Wow.
And I went out to a used bookstore, bought a couple of high school algebra and trig books, and I basically retaught myself all my high school math.
Wow.
Okay. So that was my answer to that. But let's talk about Indiana.
Yes.
Indiana, Marion County is the top county for sightings. Again, people are going to probably point at population. Okay. That is that part of that driver. Okay, so we're talking Marion County, we're talking Lake County, we're talking Allen County, Hamilton County, St. Joe's County, Tippecanoe County. Is it LaPorte? Yeah, LaPorte County.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, Vandenberg County. Those are like the top 10. Okay, top 10 cities are Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, Evansville, Kokomo, South Bend, Lafayette, Newburgh, Terre Haute.
Terre Haute.
Okay,
Yep.
LaPorte, and Bloomington. Okay, and that's pretty much the deal. Now, the state over the 20 years, average about over 20 years had 3,912 reported sightings. Now, I make a big deal about that because there are lots of people that if you go out in some of the UFO groups and things, I'll never put it on, I'll never do it to MUFON or Newfork, and the government's looking at me right now and I don't want to, people are really weird about that. So they go on, some people go on just on Facebook and share it with their friends or something like this, or they go to other places to report, and we can't count them if they don't report them. But okay, so Indiana, 3,912 for 20 years, about 200 a year, 195 is what we recorded, about 16 a month, okay, about 4 a week, and about half of one a day. So basically, it's the state ranks number 15 in the country for sightings.
I didn't know that.
For that 20-year period.
I did not know that either.
15.
Okay. 15th in the state, which is really cool. It's in the top 20. So now people say to me all the time, tell us something about someplace that did something remarkable happened. Okay. Excuse me. Voice is getting a little hoarse here. Sorry about that.
You're good.
You sound great.
Okay. Every now and then something wild happens. Okay. 2008 was one of those years for Texas, a couple of other Midwestern states, and Indiana. Now, here's a state that averages 3.76 a week. Okay. Indiana. And they had 25 in one day. April 16th, 2008. And it's what y'all call the Kokomo Lights now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That was big news.
Okay. Now, a lot of people point at Kokomo, but if I were to show you a locations table, I don't think I printed one out in that book on Indiana, but basically there were clusters in 3 or 4 major locations in the state. Okay, that day. Okay. Now, how did I identify this? I had that one chart, okay, that peaked on my yearly chart for Indiana, peaked up at 2008. I went in and looked at the entire, I'll go in and I'll put all the data for 1 year in one bar chart. It just looks like static going across the screen, and most of it right along the bottom being that baseline number. And I did it for the entire country, and I saw that there was a 60 reported. Remember I said 23 a day for the United States? There were 60 reported that day. And I said, whoa, what's going on here? I did a breakout report, and it was the top 10 or 12, 15, 20, top 20 states, we'll say, okay? And it was all onesie-twosies like I would expect, except for Indiana that had 25. So I broke out, did a breakout report for 25, and I broke it down for the whole day by location. And by the 2000, by this point, we're doing the prep work for the 2001 through 2020 book, and that was during COVID, during the COVID thing. So I had nothing better to do for almost a year and a half, but work on this thing, right. And I sat around in my pajamas all day and worked on this. But it basically broke down to that. And there's a few other places that had them. Texas had a big deal around the same time. And the only thing you ever hear about is the Stephansville, okay, because they got the publicity. But there were 5 other regional locations in Texas that had almost equal amounts of activity, but they didn't get the press visibility. Okay, so that is a bit of a driver. Indiana, what's something else good about Indiana? if you've got the book in front of you,
I do.
and folks, if you get the listeners, there's a book, the book about Indiana in 2022. We published, Linda and I promised everybody at the conferences. People are asking me during COVID. They say, "When are you going to publish a book with detailed down to the local level?" Because our first book was states and counties.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and one day during 2020, I sat there on the dining room table and I ran a report and pointed it into a PDF to see how big it would be. Okay, and to do one with detailed down to the, we'll call it the village level, would have been the size of 3 Oxford dictionaries. So it would have been 6,500 pages.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can't print a book like that. You can't bind a book like that. We're not talking the Gutenberg Bible here. Okay.
Right.
So what we ended up doing was, I said, I went to Linda and I said, Linda is my producer and the business owner of our business.
Okay.
She's the principal owner of our business, Dragon Lady Media. So I said, well, to do this, to go down to the village level, we're going to have to do something different. And we're going to, we actually probably need to publish 50 books. And she said, "You're crazy. Who would ever do such a thing?"
Right.
And okay, so here comes my methods engineering classes from college. Okay. And I took the idea and I said, look, since what we've got here is pretty modular stuff, I could print out the major sections. Plus, if you noticed in the book, you noticed in the front of the book, there's like a first third of the book is all of our research, all of our research papers.
Right.
Okay. That came from our pink book, the 2001 to 2020 book. We just reprinted that. So because Linda looked at it and says, if we do a state book, that might be the only book anybody ever sees. So let's show them all of our scientific papers, all the research work we did.
Yep.
Okay, that's what all that verbiage is in the front. And then the data is in the back. The data and charts and graphs are in the back.
Yeah. So
what we did, I sat down and figured out that when I tried to run a report, we'll say on a state like Indiana, I would run a report, and when I printed out the cities, just the cities, suddenly you would see the city and its number, and then you see the name of the city not capitalized as a separate report. I said, whoa, this is not good. And we realized it was dirty. Okay. And so we decided to go in and fix the database, correct the people don't spell the name of their city right. Sometimes they capitalize it, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they make it all caps, sometimes they make it all lowercase. Sometimes they hit the space bar before they enter it, and there's a little space in front. Anybody who does any kind of data sorting will tell you, the computer does not see that. Okay. So it was goofy. So I sat down started in August of 2020 through first week of January 2021. Okay. I sat down with the entire database. We brought it down out of the database, put it into a huge spreadsheet, and sorted them by state. And I proceeded to go through, and we merged it with a golden mail list. And we put 850-hour effort in over that 6-month period.
Wow.
To one, correct the spelling of the cities.
Oh my goodness.
Correct or add the county. And while we were at it, we added lat, longitude, and zip code. So the state books that you have there, okay, take it right, the resolution of these sightings right down to the zip code level in every single state.
Wow. It's amazing.
Nobody's ever done resolution like that. And these books that we've printed with the UFO desk references or the where to find them books, Project Blue Book didn't even do anything like this.
Right.
Okay. So that's the degree of this is what 2 old ladies did.
Right.
Did any of those organizations ever come to you after you published the book?
You mean I did like the Air Force reach out to us?
Yeah,
Or
did
like
any
that?
government or any other outside entity that maybe had been doing or looking into what you were, kind of the information you were seeking? I would imagine, because this, like I said, I've never seen anything. I'm into researching it, and David is too. We've never seen anything broken down like this, where it tells you the exact, like you described. So I was wondering, maybe government officials reached out to you. It might be information some of the people out there researching haven't known where these happen at, per se.
As I was a New York State resident, I made sure that my two United States senators, Ms. Gillibrand and Mr. Schumer, had copies of our work.
Wow.
They never acknowledged it when we first sent them the books. They never acknowledged it. But the day that they started congressional hearings,
yes,
I got a full page letter from Senator Schumer thanking me for supporting congressional hearings. I had written them every year for 7 years, and
wow.
I even had an open letter to the New York State delegation. My editors published it in the paper, full page.
Man,
Okay,
that's exciting.
open letter to New York State delegation.
Wow.
Oh my God, talk about hate mail. Oh, my editors loved it. Okay, we published the letter, and basically the idea of the delegation, it's all your congressmen and all of your senators, and there's 2 senators. So what the argument of the letter was, no one of you has to take the hit of being labeled a crackpot. If the entire delegation stands up to this and says, we need these congressional hearings and we needed them 10 years ago, let's look into what this is going on.
Right.
And again, I didn't hear anything. But then when they did start doing congressional hearings, I get this lovely full-page letter from Schumer thanking me. It was all in what they call Congress-ese, Thank you for doing the AAROP something, rather, section such and such. It reads like that. Thanking me for the support and the diligence of advocating for congressional hearings.
Wow, that's exciting.
Who has the latest? I gave a 17-page technical report to Congressman Larry Burkhart's office about 3 months ago. And several people who have contacts in his office have said it blew them away, but again, they were quiet. They have not called me for congressional hearings right now. Right now, from my understanding, talking to those guys, is that they're more interested in all these people who are not talking to us down in the deep compartmented security areas, and that right now is the big hoop going on. There's a lot of activity by those dark programs that don't want anybody knowing what they're doing, including Congress. And I'm sorry, they're funded by us, the American people, and they should be under the oversight of Congress.
Right.
Okay, and that's why these things have to go into skiffs. And I worked in intelligence. I understand them trying to protect their stuff, but there's a point where they need to be honest with us about what kind of technology they're dealing with and who and where it came from.
Then that's something I was going to ask you, Cheryl. Like you earlier had said, you wrote that paper and it got pulled, it got spiked because you were talking about what that would look like. Did you ever think in all these years of doing the research that we would be to this point? Did you think we'd be there sooner, or did you think it would take longer, would never happen?
I've had coffee with Lou Elizondo 3 times.
Okay.
I made sure he understood where I was coming from. We had similar kinds of clearances, okay, in the old days. Wow. And I told him, I said, I know what compartments are, and I understand the need for them. But I said, in fact, I wrote one article about the fact he was very frank with me. He had a level of middle-level management that would let him get the information up to, at that time, Defense Secretary Gates.
Mm-hmm.
It was stopped by middle-level management. And I don't wish to offend anyone by saying this, but the truth of the matter was they were hellfire and brimstone Bible thumpers, and we can't talk to aliens. That's talking to the devil, and that was the tone.
Yep.
Even Harry Reid stood up and explained that later.
Right.
Okay. So there are people down there that think that us talking to aliens is reaching out and talking to the, in the Bible, it's referred to as the Prince of the Air. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a cultural problem we have in our own world society about whether or not we want to. It's the xenophobia we have with everybody.
Right.
We didn't like the natives out in the jungles, or we didn't like the Native Americans, or we don't like a certain colored people. We don't. Oh hell! Right now, I'm a trans woman. Okay, I'm a trans woman. Nothing new happened 35 years ago. Okay,
Right.
I'm a trans woman, and in the last 2 years, everybody's demonizing us, making us look like we're bringing the Western culture to its knees. We're 0.5% of the freaking population, and no, we're not bringing it to its knees.
Right.
But they have to have somebody to pick on whose defense lifts, because the people who are doing this are a bunch of bullies.
Well said. Well,
and they can blame me. They can blame me because I was one of the 6 people who got the word transgender into the lexicon in the early 80s.
Wow.
Okay, and every now and then somebody will hunt me down, but the State University of New York at Albany took my papers a couple of years ago.
Because of that?
So, yeah.
Wow.
I was an activist for 30 years. I was one of the trans activists. I made this stuff normal.
Kudos.
Okay, I was one of the people. There were 6 of us that were part of the thing called the we're off topic. 6 of us who were part of the International Foundation for Gender Education of a board of 12 people.
Mm-hmm.
And all of us got outed. I got outed because of my security clearance.
Oh, okay.
And they were going to take my clearance away from me. And I was
Wow.
still going to work in that sort of boy persona, but I was starting to get pretty soft, if you know what I mean. Permed hair, double plucked eyebrows, double pierced earrings, but I still went to work every day at IBM Military Products in a white shirt and tie,
Yeah, and what people don't understand, Cheryl. Go ahead, finish.
Go ahead. Well, let me finish the thought. So one day, the government security guy said, "We think you can be blackmailed. We're going to turn off your clearance." I said, "What if I could fix that?" I said, "Well, we doubt that." I said, "Give me 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks." And they said, "Okay, we'll be back in 3 weeks. We'll turn off your clearance at that point." I came back 3 weeks later, and I looked at the guy, and I threw a VHS tape on the desk. This is in '85. And I said, "I'm the blonde, I'm Phil Donahue. I'm redhead, I'm Gary Collins." The guy's jaw just went onto the desk, if you know what I'm saying.
Right, yeah.
And he said, "You came out on national television?" And I said, "Yeah, I can't be blackmailed. I made copies like this
That's
one, and I gave it to all the guys here in the office, and they took them home and watched them with their wives. Everybody here knows it worked." And
good for you, Cheryl. Good for you.
So they sent me a letter a week later, and they say, "Well, while you can't be blackmailed, we thought that was bad judgment. We want you to go see a Department of Defense certified psychiatrist.
Yeah.
So if you don't, we'll take your clearance now."
Right.
So I wrote back the letter. I said, "Yes, I'll be happy to go. Send me to somebody who's got a specialty in sex and gender, because not every psychiatrist understands this." And they said, "Sure, no problem." So I went to go see this guy. We talked. I showed him, at the time I was a columnist for a trans magazine back in the day. Okay. And he sat back. People remember smoking in the office in those days. He sat back, lit up a cigarette, looked at me and said, "Cheryl, you're saner than the people who sent you here."
Yeah. Yep.
So he ran me through, they sent me up for another full set of psychologicals. I had just had a set at Hopkins, but he said, "We'll do another set on their dime." So he did a full set of psychologicals, and the thing came back and confirmed what the first set said. A perfectly healthy woman took this test, and she should be a member of Mensa. Okay.
Perfect. Yeah.
Nice.
That's where it went. So I got a nice letter from them adjudicating my clearance. We were asking for an upgrade, and I got my upgrade, and I got a copy of that DOD letter on their stationery, and I got a second copy of it, and I had it decoupaged onto a nice piece of wood, and I had it hanging up in my office. So when people came into my office at work and said, "Costa, you're crazy," and I said, "I got letters says I'm saying, what do you got?"
Yeah, boom. There we
Kaboom,
go.
yep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So we're off topic.
No, but we
Let's
always
talk
go off
UFOs.
topic.
We do
Fine.
that.
Now
Yeah,
we've had this. No, please understand. there was a lot of pushback to me when I was writing my newspaper column. Okay. People figured out I was trans, and I caught so much hell. There were a lot of people out there saying, well, how can we trust this person? That person's crazy. She doesn't know what gender she is, da, 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 da.
Right.
And I went through a lot of it, but our numbers and the research we were doing stood up for itself, and people had to start backing off. And that's kind of where this went.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Because I was going to say, Cheryl, people that never dealt with military intelligence. I was in the military and was in the Navy, and I worked in intel. You don't understand how sensitive they are to you into making sure, things aren't being sold. You have to take lie detector tests. You have to do all sorts of stuff. And you can find
Remember
one thing.
That one family who sold all that decryption information.
That's the job I had.
I was in submarines. Yeah. I collected electronic and photographic intelligence. Yeah. Yes, I'm a certified freaking spook, baby.
So do you think then, and thanks for mentioning those names, because you're really connected into this thing. I knew you were, but I didn't know how connected you were really into it after you explaining that. I do now. But so do you think the next phase is disclosure, and that will happen, Cheryl?
It's going to happen. Okay, a couple of things. I saw something the other day with Schumer, and he's making the argument. I saw a little piece on what he was saying the other day. He said, hey, what they're doing is illegal. So they're trying to reel it in. Now, here's part of the problem we're dealing with overall. This is the old intelligence person talking. It's a shell game, okay? The best tricks, and read your The Art of War by Sun Tzu, okay?
I've read it, yep.
Okay. Basic reading for our profession, okay? So basically the idea is distract and send the wrong messages.
Right.
Okay. Be sitting there waving your right hand and picking their pocket with your left.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a shell game. So what have we had? What's been part of the shell game? Oh, the ATIP program, or the AARO, or UAP versus UFO, and I've had mail from people saying, Cheryl, your books say UFO. You should have changed it to UAP. That get with the program, or they won't get with the program, or they won't take you serious.
Yeah.
And my argument is, like, I'm the only one me and Linda are the only ones who have produced the data.
Right.
In all this time, and nobody else was paying attention to this. Okay. And because this is silliness. Oh, UFOs, those are pipe dreams. Only kooks, nuts, and crackpots talk about this stuff. So anybody doing any serious research was laughed at. So I backed away. I didn't want to be a field investigator for MUFON. I sat back and I said, I'm going to approach this like an intel analyst does.
Right.
And that's what we did. And the deeper I got, the more truths came out. We're not alone, baby. And oh, by the way, let's look at it this way. There's people listening to this show that says they can't possibly get here from there. Every time I do a talk, there's going to be some science teacher or science professor from a local community college in the audience saying they can't get here from there. Okay? And the issue is, if they're keeping up with their data, the people at CERN have discovered a particular particle that when they generate it, it generates a whole bunch of anti-gravitons.
Yeah.
And guess what? They've already written papers on this. If they figure out how to do fusion, they'll be able to build mini cyclotrons. Guess what? Saucers are round, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. They'll be able to generate these things as part, and it's always been said by people who are abducted, it's no one engine room like you got on the Enterprise. No, baby. It is like built into the ship. It is a huge cyclotron, and it generates these I can't remember the name of the thing off the top of my head, particles. But there have been scientific papers written by aeronautical engineers that said, when we get this technology, we will be able to drive into the fifth dimensional bulk. A 20-minute drive into fifth dimensional bulk would have us wink out here and literally wink in from stone's throw distance at Alpha Centauri.
It's amazing.
5 light years away.
Yeah.
Okay. And I did some calculations based on the Serpo story. And they said that those guys who went to the Eben planet for an exchange program in the 60s, they were in that ship for 9 months. Okay. In special containers to protect them from some of the ill effects. Okay. 9 months. Reverse the math, and it shakes out at 39 light years, which is where that planet is.
Wow.
Okay, so we're very close to this technology. And remember, there was a guy who worked at Skunk Works, said in a presentation back a number of years ago, we've now have the technology to take ET home. Okay, but see, if you don't, anybody's worked intelligence puts the yellow stickies and the pins and the little threads up on the wall and starts connecting the dots. And baby, we've got that technology.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you, Cheryl, think that it's a combination of something outside and then inside that we've done? Or, I mean, is that how you kind of think about it?
Okay. To answer the science teachers. Okay. No, I say agree with you. Maybe they can't get here from there. But after we detonated our first nuclear weapons back in the 40s, suddenly it was 3 nuclear weapons in 45. Suddenly in 47, we have a wave of UFOs.
Right.
Okay. Over 700 reports in the United States in the June-July timeframe of that era. Okay, including the flybys over the Capitol in 52.
Yeah.
Okay. What did we do other than make a lot of noise with those nuclear weapons? Okay. No, people forget. Most of these UFOs are probably coming from local space, inner space, subdimensional. Okay. So if we set off a nuke out here in our desert, whose city did we blow up in some subdimension?
Aha.
Okay.
Yep.
That's what the data is pointing to.
Wow. My head hurts, Cheryl.
Yeah.
Mind blown.
Yeah. My head hurts a lot too, you know. But okay. I lived 7 years in a Buddhist monastery.
Jeez,
okay.
You're an amazing person.
What haven't you done, Cheryl?
Yeah.
Lord.
Oh, I don't want to get into it. It's a topic for another show, believe me.
Okay.
Okay. From 97. Okay, let's go the short route. 1997, I'm a Wiccan priestess, right? I've been a Wiccan priestess for, at that point, about 20 years. And I went to this temple with a gal buddy of mine, another Wiccan priestess, and we went to hear this Lama who came to town to talk. And after the talk in the temple, we were going to have a reception line. So we got 300-400 people out there in the parking lot. He's walking along, little 5'0" Tibetan guy with his entourage of Tibetan and American monks following him. And he's shaking hands with people. Hi, how are you? Hi, how are you? Takes hold of my hand, won't let go of it, gets up in my face and said, I know you.
Wow.
I said, Holiness, I've not met you in this lifetime. He said, oh, no, 2, 3, 4 times. Fast 400 years. I've worked with you before. And he looked at my buddy and he said, oh, my gosh, I know her too. And these two, they hang out together lifetime after lifetime. Nice to see you again. And he toddles off.
Wow.
And his head monk leans into me and says, he plays it close to his chest. I would go talk to him. So they made me a 15-minute appointment on Saturday morning to talk to him. Now, you have to understand, at that time, 97, I am Miss Corporate Dress for Success. Charcoal suit, red power blouse, 3-inch heels, heavy makeup, heavy nails, and my nickname was Napoleon in Heels. Okay. And I go in to talk to the guy, threw off my heels, got on the floor, bowed home like I was showed by the monks. to show respect. And he laughs and says, get up here on the couch. And I got up on the couch. He's sitting there in a lazy boy, and he looks at me and says, so what were you raised in this lifetime? I said, well, I was raised Roman Catholic. He said, oh, still Roman Catholic? I said, no, I've been running with the Wiccan shamans for 20 years. Oh, still doing the yogi stuff, huh?
Wow.
I said, what? He said, are you good at it? I said, yes, I'm really good at it. You think you learned it all in one lifetime?
Huh.
Jeez, wow.
And suddenly I got very seriously, that 15-minute appointment turned into 90 minutes. His aide went crazy trying to reschedule everybody. And he basically told me who I had been and that type of thing. And so thereafter, a couple of months later, I asked for permission to take temporary robes. He said I'd been a yogini, I had been a Buddhist monk or nun, several different lifetimes. I said, okay, I want to see if I can connect to this. And I did for 7 years, and baby, the things I learned. Okay. And these days I'm still ordained yogini, and I'm the pagan chaplain at a UU church.
Wow. Amazing.
But the thing is, understand that the theological and mystical training help me with my research.
I bet. Yeah, I can see that.
Because I learned how to meditate in monastery. And I learned how to deeply, by the way, I still have my job at Lockheed Martin.
Nice.
And me and the other nun who both worked at headquarters, we pushed the diversity policy to the bleeding edge.
I bet you did.
Wearing dressed like the Dalai Lama every day at Lockheed Martin headquarters. Okay.
Awesome.
And they weren't comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And then one day, a bunch of people from the Taiwan Defense Organization were there and being escorted by a couple of marketing vice presidents. And I come walking around the corner. I got my clipboard. I worked in corporate security, so I was going to go investigate a couple of laptops that got lifted. Mm-hmm. These guys see me, and these 10 guys in Asian guys in black suits throw themselves on the floor and are bowing to me. I'm going, oh my, I'm going to get yelled at. And so I went through a little ceremony with them, and they all, oh, this is wonderful. Later, they told the management there, oh, Lockheed Martin's a really good company. You hire Buddhist nuns for security. This is good karma, So, the management stopped giving me crap after that. Good. But the bottom line is that time in the monastery gave me a skill to clarify and contemplate this kind of stuff.
Right.
Sure.
So between being intelligence trained and being trained in deep thought and reflection, I've been able to dig deep and say, what if? And usually, if I say what if, I either find data or I don't. And I keep finding data. So we're not alone. They walk among us on the streets. You would never recognize them if you saw them. They're either projecting a glamour and telling our stupid subconscious, I'm not here, I look like this, but that's not what I really look like. They're doing that to us. Or they're on the butt, kind of like in Men in Black,
Yeah.
You wouldn't know them if you saw them holding the strap in the subway.
Right. It's
I'll
amazing.
answer your last couple of questions. Sorry, we got off topic.
No, we always get off on top. We always get off topic.
This is such an esoteric topic matter. Okay. And when I got to do a presentation this afternoon, and the library that hired me and Linda to go give it wanted something less data. Show them the highlights from the data. So we went back to one of our older presentations that goes back into biblical times and shows picture, medieval artwork and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So we're going to be giving the UFO 101 presentation this afternoon. Someplace.
Do you ever make it out to the Midwest or anything when you do presentations? Are you ever invited out to the Midwest or anything?
If I'm invited and they cover my plane fare, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I see. Okay.
So if there's a regional club out there that wants to do it, if they can, what I do with most people, especially since COVID, I have given presentations to MUFON chapters all over the country, and we just did it over Zoom.
Okay.
Okay, and it didn't cause me any travel, and I'm 72 in about 3 weeks. So air travel these days, thank you. The air travel is so arduous these days. I did 10 talks last year, and it about killed me. It really did.
I bet.
I was in an airport every other week, and what kept crossing my mind and my spouse's words, you don't want to be like Stanton Friedman and die in the Cincinnati airport.
Right. Right.
And that's not being disrespectful to Stanton. I knew him well.
Right.
But the point is, there's a point when you have to back away from it. And
right.
Both Linda and I have backed away, although we've got contracts for regional library. Hey, we got that eclipse coming up. Suddenly, all these libraries here in this area have signed us up for a couple $100 a pop to come give a presentation about it and everything in celebration of, hey, we're talking about space. Let's talk about aliens too.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting. And the talk I'm doing today is about basic UFOs. The one I'm doing on Monday is based on a paper I wrote for my college class in 2013. Was Rip Van Winkle an alien abduction story?
I've never heard that. I'll have to dig into that.
Oh, guess what? Well, first thing, Washington Irving plagiarized a German author, so it wasn't even his story.
Oh.
And when I was doing the paper, it was my term paper. I called my professor up and I said, "Hey, Maureen, we got a problem here. This is looking less like a literature paper and looking more like a history paper." She says, "That's okay. What's the other problem?" I said, "Hey, Irving plagiarized it." And then she says, "From who?" And I said, "This guy in Germany." And originally we were going on the idea of the theme. I was writing my newspaper column at the time. And I said, I thought, looking at Irving's story, I had never read it before. I was in that class. I had heard it read to me in 3rd grade, but I'd never read the story myself. And so I read the short story, and I came away saying that feels like an abduction case. So I did a little research online, and a bunch of MUFON investigators have written books because Hudson Valley, and it was a hot hit parade for sightings and everything. So I figured maybe it's a colonial era or Native American abduction story. The deeper I got into it, it really happened in the Clefesen Mountains in central Germany in the 1600s.
Wow.
And the guy he plagiarized only wrote about a 3-page short story, and it reads more like an abduction case than Irving's does.
Wow.
So the library came back. We did a speaking series last year, and we were a hit. So they said, "You got anything else you can do?" I said, "I got Washington, or I got Rip Van Winkle was an abduction case." I said, "Do it." And they're actually paying me more for this. So I said, "What the hell? Okay, sure, we'll do this."
Wow.
So we're doing these presentations, but it's an interesting story, and here's the goofy tell. You see the pictures from movies, plays, cartoons. They show Rip Van Winkle waking up, and he's got a beard down to his knees, something like that. That's usually how they show him, right? Mm-hmm. Old and a beard, white beard down to his belly or his knees or his ankles or something, right? The one consistent thing between both stories, he woke up with a foot-long beard. Both stories qualify that. Woke up with a foot-long beard. Foot-long beard would only go to about, it's not very long. It's about nipple length for most people on their chest, right?
Right.
So, sat down. Germanic males only grow. I went to a beauty school, and they told me Germanic males grow hair at a rate of about a half an inch a month. We did the calculations. Got a physicist friend of mine involved. And if somebody was in a spacecraft at light speed, or say 2 years, they would only age 2 years, but they would be gone 20 years.
So that would add up to...
That's where the foot-long beard came from. He was gone for about 24 months.
Wow.
So, it's telling in that regard. And then if you look at Germany, where this place, the Clefesen Mountains are, they're about equal distant from Basel, Switzerland, and Nuremberg, which in the 14th, 15th century had massive Star Wars style battles going on over the cities. If you know that history. Nuremberg in April 14th, 1561.
I'll look
and then
that
5
up.
years later in Basel, Switzerland. So it's very telling in that regard. So it's a very deep, vast subject, and everybody, and especially the media, tend to try and trivialize it to little green men. And that's the sad part about this, because there's something really amazing and eye-opening. And what my spouse is working on, and I probably shouldn't say this out of turn, but she ran off with the theme: how is our culture going to change once we are engaged with a spacefaring or many spacefaring races? Once we have first contact publicly, okay? And I've pointed out, I said, well, I think it's going to look something like we saw with the 80s television series Alien Nation, okay? They're going to be the next, and even Babylon 5 approached it this way. They looked at the aliens and says, oh, no, we're not going to hang out with those snakeheads. That was the attitude. They got to have somebody to pee on. You know what I'm saying? So humans aren't the nicest people in the world. So that's the problem.
Right.
So it's, like I said, folks, your audience, this topic is not as simple as who the aliens are. When we have confirmable disclosure, how is our culture going to be impacted? If you're a Star Trek fan, think in terms of Prime Directive. I think half the reason the aliens have not revealed themselves is most of them are probably anthropologists, and they're studying us, and we're fun to watch. But the bottom line is they don't want to overly impact our culture and change it or contaminate it.
Okay. That makes sense.
That's the logic. That's what makes sense.
Could you explain real quick, while I got this on my head, interdimensional versus, like, because when people think of alien space, UFOs, they think they're coming from, they're descending
another
down
planet, another galaxy,
Could
whatever.
you just differentiate that for us real quick?
Okay. Think of it this way. I live on the 7th floor of my apartment building. Say that's our world, that's our plane, that's our universe. Okay. There are sub universes. We occupy the same space, just different temporal coordinates further down or further up. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very different environment there. Okay. When they talk about things like the fairy traditions, the fairies in Ireland or whatever, the wee people, things like this, it seems to be there are holes between our universes and their universes, and sometimes they cross over, and sometimes people who just suddenly come up missing cross over into theirs and they can't get back.
Okay.
There are Western folk tales of people who walked out into a field and disappeared. Okay, in Western United States.
Wow.
Okay, back during the 17th, 18th and 19th century. So it's a phenomenon, but nobody wants, and nobody. Oh, that's fairy tales. No, there's, as Shakespeare says, the world is stranger than you can. I'm paraphrasing this. World is stranger than you can imagine with your philosophy, which is science.
Mm-hmm.
So, and talk to people's Skinwalker Ranch. There seems to be all kinds of dimensional holes in that place.
Right.
Okay. Time holes and spatial holes. So think about this. Okay, so if I'm on the 7th floor and I set off a really big explosion, the people right below me and right above me they're going to have their ceiling blown out or their floor blown out, aren't they?
Right. Yes.
Okay, that's what it is. And if you remember correctly, all this stuff with UFOs, and this came out in congressional hearings recently, all the stuff normally would be declassified after 50 years.
Right.
Even the intelligence, even some of the deeper intelligence stuff is declassified after 50 years. Okay. Except some of the stuff you and I probably did, and it won't be declassified until 50 years after we're dead.
Right.
But but the bottom line is, they use the Atomic Energy Act to classify it, which does not have automatic declassification.
Skirting the system. Yep.
Skirting the system. Now, why would they think to use that? Think about it. If we blew a hole in somebody else's dimension with our nuclear testing, gee whiz, maybe the atomic energy people were the first people contacted about this stuff. Stop blowing these things off. You're putting holes in our world.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
That's why I think we started seeing all these people showing up. And, you know, there's this inconsistency with shapes and things.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote articles about people who literally up in upstate New York, it was up in the Adirondack Mountains, one of these lakes that doesn't have any cottages around it. It's like where hunters go, you know, that type of thing.
Right.
Maybe camp out with their tents around the lake. And a UFO came down, appeared over the lake, and there were 10 people in this one camp looking at it. 2 people couldn't even see it, even though it was probably less than 100 yards away. They were looking right at it. 2 or 3 people saw it as a technical craft. A couple of people saw it in kind of a cartoonish aspect. Okay. And there were a couple of people who saw it as something very abstract. And like I said, 2 people who couldn't even see it looking right at it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We don't see with our eyes. We perceive with our eyes. We see with our brain. Our brain processes this stuff. And if we don't have a frame of reference, we can't process it. Native Americans, time of court, they couldn't see Cortez's ships in the bay. The shaman noticed that the waves were lapping up against something, and over a period of studying this effect, he gradually became aware of the ships.
Wow.
Okay. And in modern psychology, it's this unexpected syndrome where they've done tests where they had a basketball game going on in a college. And in the middle of the game, during a big play, a guy in a gorilla suit ran out across the court and across the other side of the court and out of the place. And while it was on video and film and all this kind of stuff, most people didn't see it. Okay, it's that old idea. You're running around in a fever. Where the hell are my car keys? And they're sitting right there on the coffee table that you looked at 10 minutes ago and you just didn't see them.
Right, that happens.
Okay, it's a well-documented psychological thing. So there's lots of stuff working against us. We're so easily distracted.
Right. Amazing. I could talk to you all day.
Cheryl, if Tony and I were to travel to come see you or listen to one of your presentations, do you have a website where people can go to kind of see what you're up to?
Gentlemen, I could not understand a word you said. It sounds like my phone line's being corrupted.
Oh, no. David, go ahead.
So, Cheryl, if Tony and I wanted to travel to see you...
Gentlemen, I cannot understand a word you're saying. You're going to have to hang up and call me back because this line has been corrupted.
Okay, I'll call you right back. Wow, we may have been interfered with there.
So you're listening to the ShipsGonnaHappen podcast. We got a little bit of a technical.
Cheryl Costa here.
Cheryl, it's Tony and David again.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
I'm going to have to leave you in about no more than 10 minutes.
Yeah, no,
we're good. What we're doing right now is we're wrapping up. So Cheryl, this is Dave. If Tony and I wanted to travel to see you do one of your presentations somewhere, do you have a website or somewhere we can go to maybe check up on you and see all your dates?
No, my website was taken down by trolls 3 or 4 times, so we just gave it up last year.
Okay.
If you're on Facebook, look me up.
Okay.
And send me a friend request. And I usually announce these things on my Facebook page, so my friends know. So please feel free to and make sure you drop me an email. Tell me what IDs I'm looking for on Facebook, and I'll be happy to friend you in. And you'll understand that I am a writer. So like right now, I've got a serial story going every day. They get 1,000 or 2,000 words worth of my serial story.
Okay.
I am a writer. I write novels and short stories. So,
Sure. Right.
So right now I share these things. The last one we did just finished up about a week ago. It was a Star Trek novel that I wrote. So
oh, nice.
Wow.
And I've got connections. I might actually have people looking at it from that organization. We'll see. Wow. That's my second one. So, but okay. So, friend me on Facebook, and I will tell you when my things are. Sure. You're not all that far distance-wise from here. No. I'm in Cleveland.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm in the western suburbs of Cleveland, so it would not be a big deal. It's a straight shot down 90.
Right. So we can grab beers after then too, right?
Yeah, we could.
There we go.
Some Irish beer.
Yeah.
An Irish bar.
Yeah. All right. Well, Cheryl, it's been nice having you. Can you give us if you don't mind, can you give us a little, hey, this is Cheryl Costa and you're listening to the Ships Gonna Happen podcast or something like that? It doesn't need to be worded exactly like that.
Okay, slow down. What's the name of the show again?
Ships Gonna Happen. Ships, SIH.
Ships. Okay, yeah. Ships Gonna Happen. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Hi, this is Cheryl Costa, and it's really fantastic to be on Ships Can Happen.
Excellent. You're awesome. This was one of the best podcasts it might be number one.
I have chills. I legitimately have chills. So,
well, have me back soon, and we'll talk anything you want. And also, I am a trained mystic, so I can come in and talk the mystical side of this topic too.
Yeah, we didn't even touch on that.
There's so many topics, Cheryl. You were outstanding guest.
You're an amazing
today.
person.
My pleasure, gentlemen.
Thank you, man.
Take care, weekend. And bright blessings to everyone in your listening audience. And I'll talk to you soon.
You're awesome. Thank you.
Bye. Wow.
So you're listening to Ships Gonna Happen podcast, and I think we just got done with the best guest we've ever had.
We probably shouldn't ruin the show.
We should probably just hang it up from here. And Cheryl, if you're still listening or if you're following up, thank you. And those of you listening, we just had an outstanding.
It's amazing
that has lived a life.
An
72 years old.
Incredible life.
And or plural.
Yeah.
Plural?
Lives.
Plural.
Yeah.
Plural. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Amazing.
Follow us on any social media. Smash that like button. Click subscribe. We appreciate everybody listening to the Ships Can Happen podcast.
Yep. And you can catch Cheryl get her book on Amazon.com.
Yes,
UFO'S in Indiana. Yep. And we'll have a link. And also she has, if you're listening in other states, she's done 31 states. UFOs in this state, this state, this state, this state. So you can catch her on Amazon.com.
Next week it's Great Divide. If you're in the area, stop by.
Ships Gonna Happen now.